Welcome to Stat Masters. I'm your host, Evan Ringler, and every week this season I'll be bringing you 20 stats in under 20 minutes to help you dominate your fantasy leagues. All the player stats that I mentioned in this video are pulled from PlayerProfiler.com. I personally use the data analysis tools to do all the research for these videos. Let's get started with number 1, Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft has a 14% or higher target share in 3 straight games. However, his depth of target in those games is just 2.7 yards. His yards after the catch is first among all tight ends, which is encouraging. At least that low A-dot roll is leading to yards after the catch. That's what we want to see. He's also been featured in the red zone with 4 targets, which leads all tight ends. I see Kraft as an every week top 12 tight end who will definitely have some dud weeks, but you should continue riding him every week. He's in a great offense, and he has a pretty good role, so you should just keep betting on that. Number 2, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones has a 19.6% target share. He has 77% of short down and distance snaps for the Vikings. He also has 86% of their inside the 5 rush attempts. Aaron Jones ranks 8th in breakaway run rate and 1st in yards created. However, despite Jones having a pretty good fantasy year so far, he's still underperforming his expected points per game due to touchdowns. I think there's a real case that Aaron Jones can be a top 5 running back rest of season. Number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs ranks as the RB19 in expected points per game, but the RB9 in actual points per game. He has a 10.7% target share so far, which ranks 22nd among running backs. He has 0 targets over his last 2 games and actually had a lower route participation than David Montgomery in week 4. So should we be concerned about Jahmyr Gibbs going forward? I don't think so necessarily. I expect his target share to rise as the Lions play more competitive games. And Gibbs has been splitting short yardage and goal line carries with Montgomery, which is a great sign for the rest of this year. Number 4, Seattle's backfield. In Kenneth Walker's 2 games this year, this is what the backfield split has looked like. Walker has controlled 64% of the snaps and 69% of the rushes, while Charbonnet is at 36% snaps and 19% rushes. Walker also has a large lead in route participation and a slight lead in target share. So not only does Walker have full control over the carries in this backfield, he also is running more routes and earning more targets than Charbonnet, which is quite shocking. With number 5, we'll continue with Kenneth Walker. Among 36 running backs with 30 or more carries, Kenneth Walker is first in breakaway run rate at 15.6%. And that basically means he is running for 15 plus yards at 15.6% rate. Second place is Jonathan Taylor at 9.6%. So Walker is dominating the rest of the field in this metric. Walker is facing light boxes 90% of the time, but I think that this is due to Seattle's focus on the passing game, which causes defense to give them light boxes. This has contributed to Walker ranking 18th in run blocking rating despite poor O-line play. Despite these weird splits, I do think that they can maintain throughout the season due to Seattle's electric passing game. I think Walker is an easy top 10 running back rest of season and potentially a top 5 running back in Dynasty. Number 6, Kyren Williams. Among 23 running backs with 50 or more carries, Kyren ranks 19th out of 23 in yards created per rush, 18th out of 23 in true yards per carry, and he's the only one of those 23 backs to not have a single breakaway run. Kyren is still a locked-in running back 1 due to the volume and the brilliance of Matthew Stafford. However, I don't think he's necessarily a good player. The sell window in Dynasty is still open, and I think you should consider it. However, like I admitted, he is a locked-in running back 1 rest of season. I do think that there's still some appeal for Blake Corum, and I'm not totally giving up. Now let's go to a quick word from the Podfather.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from Player Profiler to their dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
All right, let's go to number 7, which is the Broncos defense. We all remember how horrible the Broncos defense was early last season, especially when they gave up 70 points to the Dolphins. But in the second half of 2023, they were actually a top 10 defense by most measures. This season, the Broncos defense ranks in the top 10 of EPA per play, success rate, EPA per dropback success rate, EPA per rush, and rushing success rate. All the important metrics that we look at to determine if a defense is actually good. Outside of Pat Surtain, this is not a loaded depth chart by any means. Defensive coordinator Vance Joseph has been absolutely cooking this year, and he's been blitzing at a higher rate than any defensive coordinator in the league. I think that we should be avoiding the Broncos in most matchups this season. Number 8, Devon Achane. Among 30 running backs with 40 or more weighted opportunities, and weighted opportunities just normalizes the difference between targets, which are worth more than carries. So among those 30 running backs, Achane ranks 5th in yards per route run, 1st in snap share, 3rd in target share, but 28th in run blocking rating. He's also 1st in slot rate, and he's doubling up the second place player in that stat. And he's 11th in rushing juke rate, which is evaded tackles per carry. Achane's currently the RB6 in expected points per game, but the RB12 in actual points per game. I still think that our process with Achane was correct. The only reason that he hasn't absolutely smashed in fantasy this year is the injury to Tua. With Tua projected to return mid-season, I would be targeting Achane in all formats. I still think that he could be a true league winner down the stretch this year. Number 9 is the Tampa Bay backfield. So far this year, Bucky Irving has outpaced Rachaad White in terms of breakaway run rate, juke rate, yards created per rush, and yards per carry over expected. So some might say that Bucky is just clearly way better than Rachaad White. However, Bucky has had some of the best run blocking in the league, while Rachaad White has been dead last by a mile. So I expect some of these stats to normalize as the season goes along, and we saw that last night when Rachaad White broke that 50-yard run. Rachaad White remains to be an elite receiver at the running back position as well, so I wouldn't be expecting Irving to take White's role very soon. Number 10, Breece Hall. Among 36 running backs with 30 or more carries this year, Breece Hall ranks 32nd in yards per carry over expected, 26th out of 36 in breakaway run rate, 31st in juke rate, 22nd in yards created per carry, and 33rd in points per game over expected. Now, the offensive situation is not perfect. They currently rank 58th in run blocking rating, for example. But we should still expect more from an early first-round pick. Now, I'm still ranking Breece Hall as a running back 1 for the rest of the season, but I do have some concerns, especially in Dynasty. Now, what exactly is going to happen to this offense in the next couple of years, especially when Aaron Rodgers retires? Frankly, I don't know. I think it could fall back to Zach Wilson levels even. For number 11, we're going to be looking at the cardio king of the week. Of the 55 receivers with 100 or more routes run, this is the bottom of the leaderboard in target rate. We have Jahan Dotson at 7.3%. Then we have Darius Slayton at 11.5% and Elijah Moore at 11.9%. And here's the bottom of the leaderboard in yards per route run among those same 55 receivers. We have Jahan Dotson at 0.20, Elijah Moore at 0.53, and Brandon Cooks at 0.69. When it comes to worst volume receivers in the NFL, Jahan Dotson is lapping the field. He has just been absolutely useless this year, but the Eagles continue to trot him out there to run a bunch of routes. Number 12 is Marvin Harrison Jr. Among 32 receivers with 100 or more routes run and a target rate above 20%, Marv is first in depth of target at 14.4 yards, while Jameson Williams is in second place at 13.9 yards. I see this as a clear negative for Marv. Marvin Harrison Jr. is an all-purpose wide receiver talent, not a situational deep threat. Right now, they're using him like a field stretcher when he should be getting more easy targets underneath and allowing him to use his athleticism and route running to get the ball, break tackles, and make explosive plays. Number 13, Jameson Williams. There are 12 wide receivers right now who meet all of these thresholds: 100 or more routes, 20% or higher target rate, 40% or higher air yard share. Of the 12 wide receivers who all have giant roles in their offense, Jameson Williams ranks first in yards after the catch per reception with 12.0. Second place is Tyreek Hill at 7.2. So Jameson Williams is absolutely dominating these target hogs in terms of yards after the catch per reception. J-Mo is such a unique wide receiver due to not only his speed, but his ability to command targets all over the field and make defenders miss. If I have Jameson Williams on my fantasy teams, I'm trying to plug him in every week that I can. Now, there will be some dud games where he gets you 0 points, but that comes with the upside of him getting you 30 points in other weeks. You just have to trust the process. Number 14, George Pickens. Pickens ranks 6th among all wide receivers in expected touchdowns this year. However, he has zero actual touchdowns on the season. He's also underperforming his expected fantasy points by a large margin. He's the wide receiver 13 in expected points per game, but the wide receiver 38 in actual points per game. Pickens currently ranks 12th in target share and 3rd in air yard share, plus he's 12th in yards per route run. I see George Pickens as a high-end wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season, despite him currently being outside the top 36 in points per game. He's a great trade target at the moment. Number 15 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra is a unicorn. Of the 13 wide receivers with 100 or more routes run and a slot rate above 40%, Amon-Ra is the only one to have an air yard share above 30%, and his air yard share is 38%. This guy is just amazing. Number 16 is Jayden Reed. Among 55 receivers with 100 or more routes run, Jayden Reed ranks 1st in yards per route run, 2nd in yards after the catch per reception, and 1st in fantasy points per route run. And I think that these are actually sticky metrics, as last year, Jayden Reed ranked 8th in fantasy points per route run. Simply put, Jayden Reed is a model breaker that we should expect to consistently perform his expected points per game. I see Jayden Reed as a high-end wide receiver 2 for the rest of the season, and I actually have him ranked even higher than that at wide receiver 12. Number 17 is Jake Ferguson. Currently, the leaders at tight end in expected points per game are Jake Ferguson at 14.2, Dallas Goedert at 13.6, George Kittle at 12.8, and Brock Bowers at 11.1. So you notice that there's some big discrepancies between those top guys. But Ferg comes out on top. However, Ferguson is just the tight end 5 in actual points per game. So we should expect quite a bit of regression in the positive direction. When you combine this elite usage with the high volume that we've seen from Dak Prescott, I think Ferg could compete to be the tight end 1 overall this year. Number 18, Garrett Wilson. This has been Wilson's worst year of his career in terms of yards per route run, target rate, depth of target, and points per game. While Wilson is definitely underperforming his expected points per game by a considerable margin, I still think that he'll probably be a bust for fantasy managers in 2024. It seems to me that Rodgers' play style does not totally mesh with Wilson, as Rodgers has looked horrible under pressure this year and instead has been getting the ball out very quick, which is not necessarily Garrett Wilson's game. Number 19 is the Dolphins offense. Currently, the Dolphins offense ranks last in EPA per play by a wide margin, but that's not it. They've also been worse than any offense since 2018. Think about how many awful quarterbacks have been playing since then. I mean, you got Josh Rosen, Davis Mills, Zach Wilson, Bryce Young. This Dolphins offense is worse than all of them. While other Shanahan tree coaches like Matt LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell have been able to maintain solid offenses without their starting quarterback, Mike McDaniel has completely fallen apart. It seems to me that McDaniel is kind of relying on Tua at this point. However, Tua is coming back relatively soon, so I don't know if this is really that important. And our last stat, number 20, is the Justin Fields renaissance. Currently, Justin Fields ranks 4th in completion percentage over expected. He also has the lowest time to throw of his career and just one turnover-worthy play this season. His completion percentage this year is 9% higher than his previous career high. Currently, Fields is playing way above the level that he's played at prior to this point, and I'm starting to believe that Justin Fields can actually be a long-term starter in the NFL. We know that if he's on the field, Justin Fields will produce fantasy points, so he is a gigantic riser in our seasonal and dynasty rankings this season. That's all for this week, and you can join me again next week for 20 more stats in under 20 minutes.